Welcome. This is Ryan Lester, your host of CXNext Live. Welcome to this week's episode. Really excited to explore the world of customer experience with all of you out there. Thank you for joining live. For those of you watching this recorded, also enjoy our time together today. For those of you visiting for the first time or watching for the first time, this is a weekly series we do focused on the world of customer experience from both a strategic perspective of how do you build a really robust customer experience strategy across your organization, down through a practitioner level of how can you think about CX, the metrics you should be focused on, the ways you can improve your processes or organizations, and looking at real-world examples. So things you can take and learn from and bring back to your day-to-day work as CX practitioners. We do this every Wednesday, so great to have you here again this Wednesday. And we're really excited about our episode today and also our ongoing efforts as part of delivering a better customer experience. This CXNext is a platform we use to help all of you out there, once again, invest, explore, and better understand the world of customer experience. We do this every week. We also have an annual event we hold in May of this year, where once again, we're really trying to help all you get a better understanding of the world of customer experience, what's going on from a technology perspective, what are some best practices that are out there, and where areas you should be exploring and investing in as you try to improve your business and your overall customer experience. I'm really excited for this week's episode, where we're going to focus on part of CX that we talk a lot about here, but often gets missed in the broader discussion of CX. And that is really around the employee experience and how investing in our employees can lead to a better customer experience. And it turns out that really a great employee experience often translates into a great customer experience. And that's what we're going to spend our next 45 minutes on today. Feel free to ask questions throughout. Feel free to tag items that you're excited about, send us responses or additional detail. We'll be doing a blog post about this as well with some additional links and information. So really engage with us, and we're here to help educate you as CX practitioners on how you can deliver a better customer experience. But without further ado, I want to introduce our guest for this week. So our guest this week is Michael Pace, who's the Director of Global Member Services at Virgin Pulse. Mike is a seasoned CX expert, has won numerous awards for the work he's done across a number of organizations, and brings that passion now to the work he's doing at Virgin Pulse. Mike, welcome. Great to have you at this week's episode of CXNext Live.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So to start out, Mike, why don't we talk a little bit about your experience? I know once again, you've done a lot in the world of customer experience. You've had a number of different experiences across brands. You won awards with your work with David Yurman. Why don't we talk a little bit about your kind of background in customer experience and what really drives your passion and some of the work you've done in the world of CX?
Sure. So now it feels like eons ago, but I first started off. I was at Tiffany and Company, and I was on the phones, and people would hand they'd send out catalogs, and I could still probably tell you what's on page 26 and the letter A. Nice. And had my headset on and just kind of did that, and worked my way up, found some really great mentors, ended up freak accident kind of ended up at Capital One. I started with one company, and Capital One bought them 3 days later. And the ride really took off from there. Spent about 8-9 years with Capital One, fantastic company. Went over to Constant Contact and did some really bleeding edge customer service stuff. How to use Facebook and Twitter and things like that for, in communities for customer service. And this was back in 2008 or 9. Did that for a couple of years, decided, I can go do this on my own, and built my own consultancy, The Pace of Service, where I got to work with some fantastic organizations. Super humbling first year, but once things got rolling, really, picked up. Got to do some really incredible work with David Yurman and Tory Burch, Blue Nile, Rue La La, Citizens Bank, just to name a few. And the David Yurman experience just happened to be ranked as the #1 online experience in the world at one point, 1 month after we launched it. So it was just absolutely amazing. And now I found an opportunity to be here at Virgin Pulse. I live in Foxborough, Massachusetts. I work in Providence. As a consultant, you're traveling a lot. I have a 15-year-old son, wanted to be closer, and could not have made a better decision to come here. I'm super, super happy. It's one of those jobs where, on Monday morning, you're looking forward to going into the office to, do what you got to do and create what you want to create and move the brand forward, move the member experience forward, and, work with an amazing team here. So here I am.
That's great. And the one thing I really like about your experience is that, to me, CX really transcends, let's say, the business in the sense of customer-centric companies, really do, their culture bleeds the focus on the customer. And when you look at kind of your history, you were at all these such wonderful customer-centric companies. And so there's two sides of that are really valuable. Is one, you're picking up kind of all that good DNA from those companies. You think about where you've been of Capital One and Constant Contact and now Virgin. These are companies that really pride themselves at putting the customer at the center and being very customer driven. So one, you've learned along that way, but then on the opposite side of the coin is by you being in all these different places, you've now been able to have that kind of macro view to say, well, what are these consistencies and what are these things, besides being customer centric, because that's an easy word to say, it's more about what are the things they're doing that make them customer centric. And then you're kind of continuing to add to that catalog or expertise that you've had through all these experiences that now you can translate into the broader industry. And so what can we all learn from your takeaways at working at all these very customer-centric companies?
Yeah, so it's one of the companies I've worked with or helped build, or even if you go outside of it and look at who everyone kind of considers the best in the world, at this, the Zappos, the Ritz-Carltons, the Costcos, the what have you, right? They all have like 6 or 7 things really in common. I don't think not everyone does it the exact same way, but there are these common traits. And, first of all, they all start off with clear priorities, right?
Yes.
Every initiative has, that tricky balance between, the quality of the experience, the cost of the experience, time, how fast the things need to move, and sometimes risk. But if you want customer experience to be the most important part, you got to be clear that it's going to be there, right? The second thing is you really need culture, standards, a vision that's really aligned to that. I love the Ritz-Carlton's sort of motto, ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, right?
Yeah.
It's a clear, it's the motto, that bleeds down into their standards, and they have a set of 22 standards. I think anybody can Google them online and stuff and see what their 22 standards are, and they have a clear vision from there. And then they all show value from the customer's point of view. So it is customer centric, right? So they're looking for the win-wins in terms of initiatives, right? But the value that their metrics are centered around the ones that the customer values the most.
Yes.
And then they all have all these beliefs that they whether it's in their vision or in their standards or in their metrics, are really reinforced through their associates. So this is really where your EX drives your CX, right? And I still believe, I will go to my grave believing that EX is the ultimate driver of CX.
Yes.
And they have an infrastructure that supports it. I mean, that's obvious. They have an organization that's aligned to providing great customer service, right? Do you have the right number of people doing quality monitoring? Do you have trainers and those kinds of things? Do you have people in the positions and the organization to really succeed? And then the last one is probably the most hidden one of all of them. Great customer experiences are also marketed. What is it? The Nordstrom story of the lady with the tires walking in, That doesn't magically come out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
You know, the leaked, Zappos 10-hour phone calls and some guy ordering pizza. It's marketed as such, right? You got to be great. Customer service leaders need to understand you have to market your customer service. It is the true difference between really good service that I think a lot of people think they provide, and really, really great service. Because then it becomes a virtuous cycle too. You believe in so first of all, you got to be able to be good enough to market it, and then you got to believe in it, and it creates a virtuous cycle within itself.
Yeah, what I also like that you're discussing, and we were digging into this in detail during our time together, but you set that kind of North Star that everyone can recite. Everyone can, it's easy to remember, it's clear, it's not muddled. So you're setting that kind of North Star. You're then building organizational structure and process and all those things to help deliver on that North Star. But then you're also kind of building reinforcing loops through things like folklore or examples where people are like, wow, we are making a difference. We're seeing the results, and not just through metrics, because metrics tend to be going back to that North Star. No one's gonna tattoo an 85% on their arm or remember that kind of narrative, but they are gonna remember that story about the woman with the tires. And so where you can show that extra level of delight, those are the things people remember. They remember the story. And so they're going to, you want to kind of have that capstone of, here's who we are and why we exist. You want to have those kind of operational pieces in place to make sure you can sustain that capstone. But then you want to have those reinforcing stories that people can take with them and tell others. And then to your point, you can use it in your marketing to be showcasing why you are delivering a better experience. So I really love that as a model people can take and think about as they're working on their CX strategy.
Yeah, let me give you a couple of real world experiences. I think we put the Ritz-Carlton and the Zappos and all these things up on a pinnacle, and they sometimes feel they're not achievable or something. And in an articulated, internalized culture is the most basic level foundational piece of a broader customer service strategy. I think you and I are going to get into that in a minute, but I'll give you two real examples of how this worked. So I came into David Yurman. It was completely blue landscape. We could do kind of build everything from scratch, and we hired their soon to be director of customer service, and I was talking to her and asking her, why is this important? Right. And, I think her first answers were very, NPS or Net Promoter Score or customer satisfaction, right? Or, so we retain customers and loyalty and advocacy and customer lifetime value. And she had all these great answers.
Yes.
To the wrong question, right? And we kept pushing. And then finally, I think the question that really kind of struck was, what's our purpose?
Yes.
Right? Like, why? Right? So we started talking about it, and David Yurman was about, it's a high-end jewelry. It's very ornate and unique. And we realized it was about celebrating life and making memories. And sometimes it was retail therapy, yes. And it was about making experiences and making a connection. And, the NPS and the retention and the customer sees that. Those are all results of your why, right?
Yes.
And you build everything on top of that. I'll give you the opposite too, which, a few years back, my girlfriend, my son, and I flew down to Orlando. We were going to go do the kind of Universal thing and all that type of stuff. And, flew out of Logan, got to Orlando, 3-4 hours in, got to the rental car space. We go up to the rental car space, and, there's a line of like two people, I think there was like 4 people in front of us. And, I look down to the left, there's nobody at any of the other rental spaces. Look down to the right, no one at any one of the rental spaces. And honestly, we were there for like 45 minutes and nothing was moving, right? And you're looking, and the process analyst in me is going crazy. I'm like, this is what's wrong here, and this is what's wrong here. But in the end, I actually realized what was wrong. They didn't understand their purpose was they were my gateway to my vacation.
Yes.
Right? Like they might hurt. Like they could be one of two things. They could be my literal travel agent to get me to my vacation better, faster, more enjoyable, whatever. Right? Continuing on this, I had a good flight. If I had a great car rental experience, it would have been fantastic, and and on. But what they ended up doing, I realized, was like you kept me like in the end of like an hour and a half from like my vacation, which I only had like 3 or 4 days, right? So it really mattered. And then I was upset for probably like a half hour afterwards.
Yes.
And then when I kind of figured this all out, then I was all inspired, like, oh, I got something to think about and write about and talk about and use about. But that's the opposite of not having one, right? If the people at the car rental agencies understood their purpose was they were the gateway, the last hurdle, I don't know, probably something more uplifting or something like that to my vacation. If that purpose was ingrained in those like 4 or 5 people, like standing there and I don't know what they were doing, maybe I would have been out of there in 10 minutes or whatever the case is. But it drives if they built everything around being the gateway to my vacation, it'd be different. At Yerman, we built everything around making memories. It was everything from our, that was the culture. We looked at the talent that way. We looked at our process. We looked at our technology. We looked at how we used our data, and all of our metrics surrounded about making memories, because that's why we were doing it.
Yes, and what I like about that, the example I always love to use too is Southwest. Southwest has all those operational metrics of time with the plane on the ground, cost of managing the plane, speed of boarding and onboarding, all those things that operationally help them to be cost effective and efficient and offer good economic value. But on the opposite side, it's the flight attendant, the people on the plane want to make your experience better. It's about making the trip kind of as delightful as we can make it, knowing that airline travel is tough, versus other airlines where, the person on the plane feels more like they're, herding cattle and prodding you into submission versus giving you that delightful experience. And once again, it comes down to, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to delight people and entertain them and make this experience the best we can make it? Or are we about, hey, my job is to get you on and off the plane as fast as possible, so hurry up and put your bag in the overhead?
Right. And in Southwest could have so many whys, right? I'm not 100% sure what theirs is, but whether it is getting people back home to see the important thing is like getting people back home to see their family, right? Or getting people off to vacations, or or taking care of somebody when they're in trouble and need help, or someone die, whatever the case is, right? But there's so many purposes and there's so many possibilities in that experience that if your agents, your customer service agents, or your retail frontline people, or what have you, really understand, like, this is why we're doing it. It's more than a job. It's more than a transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important way to start. And I like that, so I think as we're now transitioning to our kind of digging into this detail, I think starting with that why, the Simon Sinek, a lot of people talk about starting with why. I think it's critically important. And then I also, reinforce what you said about the employee experience. So much of what we just talked about is that employee experience. So as a brand or as a company, you can invest lots of dollars in marketing programs and, customer advocacy and all these different things. But at the end of the day, it's you standing in line waiting for your rental car and the employee experience of how they're servicing you as a customer. And so much comes back to that. So let me just quickly do a quick reminder. So for those of you that just joined, this is CXNext Live. So whether you're watching at your desk, in your commute, or you're working from home, this is a weekly broadcast we do, really focusing on bringing the world of CX to all of you out there to help you become better practitioners, better experts, learn from real-world examples. I want to reintroduce our guest. Michael Pace is the Director of Global Member Services at Virgin Pulse. And today we're really focusing on remarkable employee experiences and how that delivers a better customer experience. Mike and I were just chatting about how you kind of build from the top down culture, a focus, a dedication towards customer experience. And Mike, you have a great visual you kind of built out of this cathedral strategy, which really talks about, how do we focus on aligning our entire organization around a better experience. And so I want to move us forward here and have you kind of dig into this. This is based on all those learnings you've had working with all these great brands, whether directly or as a consultant. So can you kind of take this high level narrative we've been focusing on for the last few minutes and start to apply that towards this cathedral strategy?
Sure. And I'll pick up a little Simon Sinek from your conversation before. Especially as a consultant, when people ask what you do, everybody has I'm an electrician, I'm a this, I'm that. I told people I build cathedrals of customer service.
And I love it.
Where you can go with that conversation, especially, in my line at that point in time, my line of work was also selling myself. But, again, it's sort of the why you do it. And, for me, what I did was I built, cathedrals of customer service, and, kind of that was my marketing and such. But it's really what I told people I did. And the first layer of that cathedral, the ground floor, the most foundational piece of things is we talked about like a clear and articulated culture, right? This is the David Yurman, making memories. This is the Southwest we just talked about, right? This is the Ritz-Carlton's vision standards, ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen type of thing, right? It all starts from there. And I'll explain even how it bleeds up into all the next levels of your foundation, which lead to your strategic pillars, which hold up your great customer experience. And I have not found an organization that this does not fit into. It fits into every single customer service, based organization you can provide. So the second one up on the staircase there to a great experience is talent. The best talent, the best people, right? If we truly, every company will tell you, our greatest asset is what? Our people, right?
People, yeah.
But then how do you actually treat them and such? So, for customer service folks, and I say we start with the job description, right? You can go on Indeed and there'll be things like this, say call center job. Who the hell wants that? Now I'm not saying you got to go the whole Ernest Shackelford, I'm looking for, people to risk their lives to go to the South Pole and, be warriors or whatever. No, but be who, it should be who you want to be in your job description, right? So you're getting the right people initially, right? I'm looking for people who can make memories or, for David Yurman, right? And I wanted people who had, interest in fashion. So it was a will versus skill thing, right? And then you start getting into what are you really looking for. So, the example again with David Yurman was, my goal was to find people who could make memories for our customers, right? So the interview was actually two parts. The first part was 5 minutes, which was the most important part. And all it was, could you build rapport with me in 5 minutes? That was the whole purpose of the interview. It had nothing to do, because I have 5 minutes with you on the phone, or I have 5 minutes with you on a chat, or I have 5 minutes of your attention in an email, right? I need someone who could build rapport with you. That's what I want, because I want to make memories. I want to help you make memories, right? So it went into how we hired and who we hired. The second part was more about, again, the will. Did you have interest in fashion? Did you have interest in this, right? Yes. Maybe get into some behavioral things so you can, spot all your red flags and stuff. But what you got to understand, what are you really looking for? We were really looking for people who, had an interest in fashion and, could build rapport. here we look for folks who, have a genuine interest in wellness and who have a genuine interest in helping people. And, we're still working on our grandiose why here, but, we're putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
And then what is your first impression when you bring them in on the first day? I mean, how many call centers and customer service centers, like, here's your desk, see you later, right? Or here's your, we're going to put you in, welcome, no sign at the door or anything. You walk in, there's nobody, you don't even know who to talk to, where to go. You walk in and you get stuck in some training room, learning some technical, how to push the buttons on the thing to make this, this ticket go to this place. What the hell kind of first impression is that? First impressions count and they last. So make it a great one and make sure the person understands they're welcomed and they're valued, and they have a this is more than just a destination. And a lot of this is part of that broader trust build that you're going to build with them, right? If they trust you as a leader, they'll follow you in your direction, and you need to make sure you have that sincerity and that reliability and that competence. And so what are you doing with these people? I talk a lot about. Okay.
And the fact that we're here in New England, not that I'm necessarily a fan, but I also like think about this as like, the Patriots and the success they've had up here in New England. It starts with that like culture of do your job. So we're very deliberate on like, here's the expectation of you coming into this organization, what we're going to do. They then look for the talent of the best talent for what they want as a culture. So we want people who buy into our system, who are going to, do the job we've asked them to do. And then we're going to put a process on top of that helps to make them wildly successful. So you look at people that come to that team, and I think this is a commonplace with really high-skilled, high-functioning organizations, is they hire people, to your point, that are going to fit well with what the job we want them to do. And then we're very deliberate about what we ask them to do and the way we invest in them and coach them and mentor them, knowing that they're kind of bought into this broader program. And if they don't buy in, if they come in and there isn't a fit, then oftentimes they're going to be out the door. And what I like about this construct you've done is, once again, you can see examples across industries, across, whether it's sports to entertainment, to the working world, to the contact center, where this, once again, is a repeatable construct or a repeatable methodology to building that higher level structure, that higher level cathedral towards broader and bigger success.
Yeah, I think you were even going into the third sort of block there with the process, right? Like the Patriots have a process, they have a formality, right? I always think of it like risotto, right? Do you cook? Can you cook?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay. So, like risotto is one of those things that is like process perfection, right? It's lots of stirring and lots of ingredients, right? But if you do too much, it's going to turn into a big glob of gook, right? Like it's one of those things that needs the right amount of attention, and processes like that, right? So, this is this process gives your if you align your process to, again, your sort of values and your goals and your people, and you got the right players for the right position and the right, sort of scheme and such, right? Think the Patriots or any of your own football teams, right? And this allows them to empower themselves to move themselves in the right direction, right? Because you have a process, right? And it reduces your micromanagement, and it gives you better governance and less risk. And, there's also, what's really important with process is to know when to dump it, to know when you've created that risotto ball mess that is a mess, and it's just time to dump it, scrap it, start from over. Let's stop looking and try to how to do this A, B, C, D way, and let's just jump right to D, right? I'm the president of one of the largest communities of customer service people in the country, and the Northeast Contact Center Forum.
The Northeast Contact Forum.
A lot of folks there, they're still talking about, should we do chat? I'm like, chat is a good ABC, to get some, but you know what? Just go right to text. Go to asynchronous messaging, right? Go to WhatsApp, go to text, go to what. Chat is great. It's super efficient. It's fantastic. But you know what? Sometimes the best way to get to D is just to skip to D. and sometimes processes there and such, and
it goes back to like sorry, to your key point of also, and then I think this leads us to the next phase of technology, but also thinking about, okay, well, what is our, going back to your grounded roots, what is it we're trying to deliver? What is our customer wants? And then what's the right process? And that will evolve over time. So to your point, maybe your customers are shifting from engaging with you on a website where chat's relevant to more mobile app, or into more, you're getting a lot of engagement with things like Facebook Messenger. And so really understanding your customer needs and where do your customers live today versus maybe where they lived a few years ago, or and then what's the right process and then the right technology. And I think too often people start with the technology first. So even using something like messaging as an example, well, what are you trying to accomplish with that customer? And is the right way to do that through a messaging? Is the right way through chat? Is the right way through email? And not starting it as a technology problem, but rather a customer-centric problem. So what are they trying to accomplish? And what's the right people, process, and eventually technology we need to go solve that problem better?
Yeah, I think far too often technology is made the objective, right? Versus the tool to get there. It's somehow the power drill is the objective of the bookshelf, right? Yeah. Like the bookshelf is the end piece, right? And 90% of technology projects are people and process projects. Doesn't make a difference what you're building. It's very, very rare. I mean, if you're doing bot stuff, I just put a new telephony system in here. It's about the design of the organization, the people, and the flow of the calls and the flow, those kinds of things. It's a process. There's technology, right? And you're hoping for a great win-win, and it's good for good for your customers, and good for your employees, and good for everybody. But it is a tool to get there. I can say one piece of technology though that I really, really want to, what I believe we talked about before, sort of the the employee experience being important. I have 220 some odd people who work for me here at Virgin Pulse, who work here in Providence and work from home in Bosnia Herzegovina and Dallas, Texas, right? It's great to use, we use Teams here, you can use Slack or whatever, but the technology in supporting all this is fantastic, because I've set up my own channel where either I'll do live broadcasts or put out our monthly dashboards onto them and things like that, where they're there. But we also, this morning I was talking about what I've been streaming on Netflix recently, right? So it's building that trust, it's building that authenticity, it's building that conversation. I can't physically be everywhere. Even in my Providence office here, I have 80, 90, 100 people. I don't have a chance to actually, between meetings and everything, get a chance to say hi and thank them and whatever, right? But on Teams, I do. I could throw up, a quick, we got, this coming up, throw up a quick PowerPoint slide, do a little voiceover, send it out, everyone checks it out, right? The technology today to be able to interact and to be able to, move your people is so much further than before. And, and like I said, it's more than just, here's the latest metrics, here's the service level from yesterday. Like, no one cares about that, right? But, for some reason, I'll put something about the weather. I'll get a stream of like 110 messages about the weather here and the weather in Bosnia and the weather in Dallas, and it's too hot and too cold, and it's amazing. But it's the conversation. It connects people. It connects you to your agents. It builds that trust. It builds that sincerity. It builds that. You got to make sure you do it in a reliable fashion, right? To really kind of trust.
Yeah. And I think I like that you're kind of going back to an earlier point you made, was around this, like the folklore, the narrative, and we want to have that top level vision, so that clarity of where are we going, why are we going there, and then we want to have those processes to support it, all that kind of stuff in the middle of the pyramid here, or in the middle of the cathedral. But we also want to have that ability to kind of share the stories, share the little things that make us feel like a community, and that community could be about a great customer story that becomes folklore, but it's also about sharing those small moments of, hey, I had this great win, or hey, I saw this thing, and it makes us feel like a community And that is, I think, so critical because to your point, when an employee shows up to work, whether it's their first day or their 1000th day, they want to, if you can make them feel like they're part of something bigger that has a clear direction, it's going to motivate them so much more. And so I agree with you. As we think about employee experience, it's not just about, content sharing and knowledge management, which is critically important, but also how do we make them feel like they're part of a bigger effort and that their small contribution, even if it's a big contribution, is having bigger impact. And so I also like that as an important point for those out there to think about of, how do we build these great reinforcing loops that make us all better?
Yeah, it's like I said, I mean, I truly believe EX, is what drives, CX more than anything. You get the right people on the bus, you point them in the right direction. I think a lot of times we forget that these are all adults too, right? Yes. These are adults with mortgages and insurance and kids and crazy crap going on in their lives too. But like they are adults and they do, I use a term from Chip Bell, exercising responsible freedom, which is about, sort of this concept that, they can empower themselves to do the right thing for the customer and that, here are the guardrails, right? Anything you could do to help the customer within these guardrails is completely acceptable. And if something goes wrong, let's talk about it, right? There's the intent was there. The impact the intent was great. The impact might have been, not so great, but let's talk about that, right? A safe environment that, people can empower themselves to do things. Empowerment's one of those soapbox issues for me where I can get onto it and, I will be one of the first. I don't know if anyone else says this, but I don't believe you can empower other people. I can't zap people. I can't touch people. I can't, put my enthusiasm and, touch them with it and now they're empowered, right? No, it doesn't happen that way. You got to give them the tools to empower themselves. And once you really understand that, it's something that they have to be able to turn on for themselves. But you got to, it's sort of, you got to provide all the necessary, tools and nutrition and things like that to for allow them to kind of do the right thing, for your customer and, be excellent for your company.
Yeah, that's great. I'll take a quick break here to just do a quick station identification. So for those of you that may have joined partway through our episode here, this is our weekly CXNext live series. So whether you're at your desk or on a commute or working from home, this is a weekly series where we focus on the world of customer experience, helping all of you out there get a better sense of building your strategy, learning from real world examples, learning from real world practitioners. So welcome to this week's episode. Joining me this week, I'll reintroduce our guest, Michael Pace, who's the Director of Global Member Services at Virgin Pulse. And today we're talking about a remarkable employee experience, creating a remarkable customer experience. And Mike and I have been exploring the work he's done in his role as a CX leader, as a CX consultant, at his current work at Virgin Pulse. And we're talking through this great cathedral strategy he has, which is really focused on how do you align your organization around focus at the top line of our North Star, where are we going, why are we going there, down through the day-to-day guidance you give them on why do we exist, what are we doing, and how do we stay focused on the customer and keep the customer at the center of that conversation. Mike and I have talked through this construct. He's given us some great examples of, how do you articulate this? How do you build a culture? How do you hire the right people? How do you focus on the right technology? How do you drive some of those insights out of, what's working and what's not? Mike, you were just talking about, empowering people, and I completely agree with you. I had a great professor at MIT I'd worked with named Steve Spear, and he focused very much on lean and operational effectiveness. And he used to use this term about if you can hold it, starting with holding, then lead to clamping, then lead to bolting, then lead to welding, and don't weld it if you can do those other things. And the reason I like that mental model is just as you've described, don't overly constrain the person. Because if you weld them in place, if you give them too much definition, you're not flexible to let them adapt, grow, change to the environment. So only give them as much control as they need and let them be adaptable. Let them feel empowered to then go explore and learn, and give them that direction, give them the clarity of here's what success looks like, here's what we're all marching towards, but give them as broad a range of flexibility as possible so they can find the best path there. And I love that as an approach. I think too often we get so ingrained, as you mentioned, in the metrics. It's all about the metrics, average handle time, first call resolution. And what happens is we super constrain people. So all they feel like is they're a little cog in the machine, and their job is just to operationalize or optimize those metrics. And you lose the opportunity for them to really delight the customer. So I love what you've brought up there. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it for those out there trying to create cultures and organizations of change agents and innovators and people that really want to inspire and drive the organization forward.
Yeah, and I'll just tag on to that real quick. So, we talked about the foundations of the cathedral, and then there's 4 sort of strategic pillars of, these really are your metrics that kind of fall in here. Your quality metrics, your cost metrics, your people metrics, I call it well-managed metrics. These are really like, are you a disciplined organization, risk over, those kind of things. But again, we were talking like, are you measuring your people metrics, right? Again, if they're the most important asset you have and the most value, what are you measuring your employee engagement? Are you measuring your ENPS or your employee net promoter scoring? Are you measuring, even the simple question of like, I often dread coming into work, right? Like, is that a high, low, right? What is your, I promoted like 27% of my staff last year. Whether it was internally or externally to other parts of the organization, right? Like are you tracking those? What's your voluntary or involuntary, your attrition, those kinds of things, right? And when you dig in, I kind of talked about, this exercising responsible freedom. Again, I didn't coin it. It's Chip Bell is fantastic. Wrote lots of, kind of knock your socks off customer service books and such. And, the first part is always respect, right? Like these are adults. Treat them like adults and treat them like, human beings. They're not, numbers and agents and that kind of stuff, right? They bust their ass for you 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And, it's okay to, bring carts with, cake on it and ice cream bars every once in a while, right? Because they're stuck. But also, just the respect, like in terms of, treat them like adults, treat them like, don't dumb things down for them. If you're sharing hopefully you're creating a dashboard and, it's kind of the well-managed piece. If you're creating that dashboard, are you sharing your metrics with them? Like they might not understand your contact to order ratio, your contact to member ratio, or your cost per contact, but you should still share it with them. It doesn't mean they, because they may not care about that one specifically, doesn't mean it's not still, that you shouldn't give them respect to understand it. How well are you painting the vision, right? Like what's the light at the end of the tunnel, right? What's the light at the end of the tunnel for them and for where you're going, right? Are you going north, south, east, or west, right? And you don't need to know you're going to San Francisco. You just need to know you're going west, type of thing. You don't need to take Route 80. Just go west and, it'll be okay. So what's that vision? And the other thing, part of that vision piece is, we didn't talk about is, what are you measuring your people on, right? If it's all results, if all you're caring about is, their quality score, and, their productivity scores, right? That's their results. That's,
yes.
If people only care about results, like, Genghis Khan would have been a great project manager, right? Like, but he's a barbarian, right? Like, he's a jerk. So we measure, competencies just as much as we measure, results. We look at communication, teamwork, customer focus, integrative thinking. I'm going to forget all of them because I'm on the spot. Results orientation, living our values and such. And, and we have, so this is what's really expected of you as an agent and as a team lead and as a supervisor, as a frontline manager, kind of looking at those competencies across that direction. And it gives them like, this is where I'm going, right? You got to be able to provide where you're going. And along with that, you need the guardrails.
Yeah, agreed. And I was recently talking with someone in a podcast, and I gave the example, which I also relate to here. not to have too many different ways we're kind of coming at this, but is that you think about kind of the destination. So I like your point of we're going west, and that gives someone a broad destination. And then they may have a GPS that's telling them, okay, here's the route and the key points of turns or inflection or things you need to keep an eye on. And then there's their instrument cluster, the dashboard. And the dashboard should be there to give them sense of how are they doing today? Are they going at the right speed? Are there things they should be concerned about? Are there warning lights? Or, is everything running fine?
Love the analogy. This is great.
And I like it also taking it back to your cathedral structure of, I love things like OKRs in the sense of, you need that kind of GPS of, is everybody running in the right direction? Are we all aligned? Do we have the metrics to stay aligned? And it all kind of nests up to a bigger picture. But at the same time, it can't just be about the OKRs. It can't just be about the metrics, because that can get us either a snapshot in time or not be clear as to what's our mission and where are we going. So I think there's so much about this that we can take in our day-to-day lives and really better understand of, okay, we're clear about where we're going. We're clear as to what are the key points, the turning points we need to be paying attention to. But at the same time, we're also clear as what are the things we're going to use to measure ourselves today, in the short term, in the next month, that help us to make sure we're on track, we're going in the right course. And so I once again really like this structure as a way to help our employees feel educated, informed, bought into our bigger vision, but then clear on here's how we're going to measure you towards that vision. And our goal is to make you wildly successful so you can do more, be bigger, be happier, and enjoy your job more.
Yeah, wildly successful companies, they almost always have, incredibly successful, customers and incredibly successful associates with them. That's really what builds, wildly, super companies. So.
That's great. So the last thing I'd say is, you brought to life a lot of different examples and they've been great. I wonder if there's anything else, as we kind of look at this structure of the people or the best talent or, process management, if there's any last examples you'd like to highlight that you think, once again, kind of put a capstone on our discussion today around the employee experience leading to a better customer experience.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple things. Make sure you're measuring it. Make sure, as you can almost take the cathedral, right? You have these, these strategic imperative pillars. The quality, the quality of your experience, the costs, scale, flexibility, your people metrics, and then how well managed you are, how disciplined you are. And you could take, what you want to almost actually do is, think of those as verticals, and look and think of your culture, your talent, your process, your technology, how you're leveraging data in almost sort of like a horizontal view.
Yep.
So if I'm going to look at quality, how am I looking at this from how does this fit with my culture? And then quality, how am I thinking about my talent with this culture, and process and the technology and the data, right? And then do the same thing for costs, and do the same thing for people, and do the same thing for being well managed. And it will build your strategy. Like, it will build what you were planning on doing. The interesting thing is the strategy is, it could be a multi-month or it could be a multi-year strategy, right? I do not plan on changing that cathedral, for as long as I'm here at Virgin Pulse. But what my my tactics and my execution on, especially within the strategic pillars, that quality, cost, flexibility, and people and well managed, is really probably where the tactics will change. But the strategy is that's why when I meet people as a consultant, what do? I build cathedrals, right? You can go back to you can go back to the Pantheon that's more than almost 2,000 years old, or probably about 2,000 years old now, right? You can go all the greatest cathedrals of the world, like they're like these big rock solid monuments of for experience of some kind. So I build cathedrals.
That's great. Service. Yeah, and I think the other reason I like this too is it becomes once again, it's flexible in the sense of challenges change, organizations change, business priorities change, but it gives you a point to go back to say, okay, let's make sure we're doing things like putting our employees at the center of things and making sure our employees are aligned with our high-level strategy, our North Star, but also feel like they're, to use your word, empowered to make change and be change agents and deliver great results. So I also like this in the sense of it gives us a template or a structure to have these discussions in a more informed way, but also gives us the freedom to talk about them over the next month, over the next year, over the next 5 years, where we're making those things that are critically important, like our people, our employees, front and center, a main pillar of our overall strategy, but then talking about it through the lens of, well, what does that mean from a process perspective? What does that mean from an org perspective? What does that mean from a data perspective? So that we're building the systems or processes to help make everyone successful, but doing it at a macro level. So for me, I really like this. And once again, I like to make parallels to other best in breed. And I don't know how much you're familiar with the Toyota production system, but when Toyota was really revolutionizing the world of lean manufacturing, they had a very similar construct, which once again similarly said we have this higher level value of great quality, great cars, and there's these supporting elements that really help us deliver on it. So I think the pantheon, the cathedral structure, is one that definitely resonates.
Yeah, it's kind of followed me where I go. I mentor folks on it. I still believe it's the those kind of 5 steps at the start are sort of the basis for everything, and then that strategy piece is there. I like it because it's almost tactical strategy, right? Yep. In that one, if you're thinking about how am I going to build a strategy, you could probably be there for multiple days and stuff. Now you've cut that piece off, right? I understand how to build it now. I know where to go. How are we thinking about it? How do I communicate it to? Like, I think one of the things I said earlier on was, the last great customer experiences are always marketed. You got to market it to your troops too, right? And I think it creates a sort of visual of showing like these are the things you care about, really at the ground level, and they're going to drive all these other things. And I think that again, like you treat them like adults, you treat them like super valued employees. They'll get it. They'll latch onto it. They'll do most of the driving themselves. That's
great. Well, Mike, I really want to thank you. I really enjoyed our conversation today. For those of you that maybe joined halfway through, today on our CXNext episode, we had Mike Pace, who's the Director of Global Member Services at Virgin Pulse, join our episode. So Mike, thank you so much. Really great conversation. A lot of really good information on really putting the employee experience first, which then leads to a better customer experience. So I want to thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, great discussion. We'll be, again, this recording will be posted, so you can feel free to share it. We'll also be doing a blog write-up so we can include additional information, this visual on the cathedral strategy around customer experience that Mike has created. So we'll post that in the blog. We want to thank all of you that joined live and thank all of you that will be viewing this via the recording. This was our next weekly episode of CXNext Live. We'll be leading up towards our CXNext event in May, so please continue to check back. We'll be highlighting a lot of great information for all of you out there trying to build a better customer experience, create better experiences for your customers and your employees, and really figure out the ways to unlock differentiation through customer experience. So I want to thank you all again for joining. Look forward to next week's episode. We're really excited for the upcoming guests we have on our weekly series. And feel free to post comments, ask questions. This is a great topic. We obviously love talking about making employee experience better. So feel free to engage with us and ask us additional areas where you'd like to dig in further. And thank you again for joining CXNext Live. Looking forward to our next episode and talking to you all soon. Thank you.